Welcome to the Champions Rugby Show. We're down to our final four after a wonderful weekend in the Heineken Champions Cup.
Clear way to Good, and now Duncan Taylor did brilliantly to find Good, and Good's going on his own, and Good will score.
On to Iribarren, that was fed on to Russell, the sweeping pass, they've already got a man over out wide, and the first score, it comes inside 2 minutes.
Here's Malvarka again, didn't work for him last time, but he's got it on to Kolbe, because it works for Cheslin Kolbe.
For the first time, Exeter are into a Champions Cup semi-final.
Hello everyone, welcome to the show. I'm James Burridge. After 8 months with no European action at all, the Heineken Champions Cup came back with a bang at the weekend. Helping me to dissect the action, I have the former Wasps flanker, French rugby connoisseur. It's a big bonjour, ça va to Florent Rossigneux. Hi there, Flo.
Hi James, how are you?
Very good to have you with us, sir. And we also have a man whose voice you'll all recognise. Sky Sports and Channel 4 Sport rugby commentator extraordinaire, Miles Harrison. Miles, it's been a year since I caught up with you in Japan. It's great to have you on the pod.
Yes, Rugby World Cup, Yokohama and all that. We had some great times, didn't we? But we had a good weekend in Europe, so at least we got some rugby to talk about.
Yeah, a lot has happened in that year. We're going to be hearing from Brett Sturgess, who's going to be analysing Exeter's performance against Northampton, looking ahead to see if they can lift the title for the first time. But before we get stuck into those semis, fellas, can I just reflect on Miles, you have been commentating on this tournament from the year it started almost. And it must be so difficult for you to pick out maybe one memory in 25 years of European competition. What are the moments which you look back on fondly?
Wow, how long have you got, James? You're absolutely right.
It's a tough opener, I grant you.
25 years and absolutely packed full of great memories. It's been a wonderful competition, really from the off. It was the competition that the sport needed and wanted for the professional era. It was a perfect fit. It took clubs onto another level. It got that cross-border element. It had everything, and we all bought into it pretty quickly. And you remember those early days, Bath Brief final, Leicester winning in Paris. They were epic matches, and they have to rank even now as some of the greatest memories. If you want me to really sort of drill down and home in on one sort of area of the tournament, I would go for 2004. And I always answer this in this way because of what happened at the end of that tournament. I felt took it onto another level, broke the ceiling, if you like. We had the semi-final weekend of Toulouse-Biarritz in Bordeaux, which in itself would have been one of the great memories and maybe the greatest. It was a brutal match. And I remember walking around the ground that day thinking, this is so special. This is two French clubs now playing each other, because there was always that doubt about the French clubs, how much they bought into the competition. And it felt like the most important thing for France. Europe had arrived in France. And then the next day we went to Dublin for Munster against Wasps. So what a weekend that was. Are you ever going to match that game, that semi-final? Well, we nearly did in the final with Toulouse against Wasps. So maybe it's not one memory, one match, but in the context of the whole tournament, that's where I'd go 2004, but so much since.
There is just so much. Flora, what about you?
Well, a bit like Mars, I think that competition is exactly what you want to watch in rugby, and all the excitement now we get from the French playing against other nation clubs, but nation as well, creates so much enthusiasm around it, and I found it probably very dominant in the eyes of supporters, because I feel like domestic competition are good, but when it comes to Heineken and to European competition and confrontation between different countries, I find that's the game I want to watch. Miles, you stole my game there. I was I was going to talk about that London Wasps Toulouse game at Twickenham, because obviously there was a personal attached to it. A lot of the guys who played in that final from Wasps, a guy that I played with, and it was so nice to see it. And we obviously all remember that end of the game, that dramatic end of the game, and probably Poitronneau big mistakes on that day. But there's another game which I remember again at Twickenham. It seems like Twickenham is become my home. I mean, it's not too far from home, but there was that Toulon-Clermont in 2015 where, the intensity of that game. I mean, Clermont and Toulon were dominating French rugby at the time and came in that final, after a really exciting tournament. And then that final I saw was brutal. That was, even two French clubs, but they just gave everything. And it was, obviously Toulon winning towards the end, but it was just one of the games who stick to my mind.
Yeah, so many memories from 25 wonderful years of competition. And no doubt we're going to have plenty more in the next few weeks. So let's look ahead to these semi-finals, starting with Racing 92 against Saracens. Saturday, the 26th of September at the Paris La Défense Arena, 2 p.m. local time. Live coverage on BT Sport, Channel 4, Virgin Media, beIN Sports and France 2. Let's just reflect, though, on that astonishing performance from Saracens against Leinster. Let's hear from Mark McCall, who praised his side's unity after the match. We're going to hear from him in a moment. First, here's their captain, Brad Barrett, speaking to BT Sport.
Yeah, this team's been built through hard work, adversity, resilience, and I think it showed the true Saracen spirit today. There's been setback after setback, both mentally, both physically in our team, but the togetherness of this group, I think, shone through today.
I think I've said it before, they actually never cease to amaze me, really. Pre-match, they talked about how experienced they were and how many experiences they've been through as a group. And I think you saw that out there. We needed that in the second half, but Leinster showed just the quality team that they are. And we were able to show the necessary unity, the necessary solidarity to see us through in the end. This is what we've dreamt about, and it's been such a difficult, testing, challenging year for everybody. The playing group have been magnificent, the way they've handled everything the whole way through, and the fact that they've stayed united the whole way through. I think everyone can see that, and it's a good story so far.
Miles, I bet you can't wait to commentate on this one. I mean, the performance of Saracens, driven by emotion. But equally, I was struck by one thing that Brad Barrett said in that post-match interview. He said they just want to have one more week together. And you can that is such a powerful emotive force, isn't it?
It certainly is. And doesn't Brad Barrett, the man, rather typify everything about Saracens on the field? He has that sort of... how can I politely put it? Rather battered face, if you'll let me say that. But it is a badge of honour. It really is. He goes everywhere for his team. He will do nothing that he won't ask of his players. He will do absolutely all for that family. Look, Saracens, we know, have had their problems off the field, and they have been punished for that. And we're not going to go into that now because it wouldn't be right on the back of that performance. The performance at the weekend was a rugby thing. It was something that showed a togetherness in a team that was so admirable. And it was too much for a really great side. Leinster on that long winning run, but they ran into Saracens. I thought the way they set the tone that showed that togetherness, that they meant business right from the off, all the way through to half-time. It was such a dominant first-half performance. It was, let's use this word again, one of the great 40 minutes that the competition has ever seen.
And Flo, if you're Racing now trying to plot Saracens' downfall, it's quite difficult because you look at the stats of the Leinster game. Sarries had 37% possession. They had 34% territory. So they don't need a lot to get a lot.
No, they don't. But actually, you look at the work rate on the pitch on Saturday was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they bring the rhythm of the game to a different level. Defensively, they are always on the front foot. They always put pressure on teams. And against Racing, they're going to have to do that because, Racing's big team, big players, they like to carry forwards. You've got to stop them from the start. But the more you're going to put those guys on the floor and they got to get up, the more tired they're going to get. And then I promise you, Saracens will find some space, I think, out wide because they have that ability to transfer the game and find the finishing players, which are good, or, or Maitland or all those guys who find space on the outside. So I think we're ready for a big game there.
Miles, there are so many fascinating statistics from the match, mentioned possession and territory, but look at that Saracens team. There were 12 different players in that 23 from the final of 2019. Mark McCall has blended them all together, and you wouldn't know it, would you? All these big players that were missing, it didn't show.
No, it was brilliant, wasn't it? A superb mastermind and coaching performance as well. And if I had to pick out two selections, one back, one forward, let's go with Alex Good at fly half, slipping into the immense shoes of Owen Farrell. And he showed once again that in his own right, he has sheer class to all aspects to his play, and holding his nerve at the end, where you knew Farrell would have got that kick. You just knew, because Farrell always gets kicks like that in big games. But Good stepped up for his team and delivered a Farrell-type job, but he did it in a good way. And I don't mean that as a pun. He did it in his own way. And I think it's a great testament to him as a player. They didn't miss Farrell, and that is saying something. And in the pack, when I saw the team announced, I just wondered whether they were missing a trick, because they've been using the young stars, the young athletes, so well in the Premiership since lockdown, since the return. I just looked at the pack and thought, might they have just rolled the dice somewhere? But then, if you had to make the selection yourself, why wouldn't you go for someone like Tim Swinson with all his experience? And what a brilliant selection it was. And there was another player new to the Saracens family who delivered for his new family. It was a top-class performance from a man who has an awful lot of experience, but had to do something that maybe just put him outside of his comfort zone, even after all of these years, and he stepped up to the plate as well.
A lot of people are going to be hugely excited about the style of people like Finn Russell this weekend, and how Racing can mix it with a kind of a high-tempo game against Sarries. And then you look at the front rows of both these sides, they are colossal. I loved how Camille Chat was playing for Racing in the last couple of weekends. He just bounces off players. He's just effervescent. And then you look at the front row of Sarries and how they dominated, not just in the set piece, but in the loose. And in defence, 54 tackles from that Sarries front row. I mean, that battle alone is worth the money, isn't it?
I mean, I talked earlier about the tempo and the rhythm that Sarries bring into the game. And, their players are so mobile around the pitch. And, the lead of Jamie George, of Itoje and all those guys, you can see them coming in that line, always on their feet, always up, ready to make the next tackle, put the next pressure. And on the other side, Racing, Shah, Klassen, Lore, all those guys are big players as well on the day. And they just, I think Racing will come into that game really definitely trying to put Saracens off key and try to disrupt their organization in defense. And we're going to see some epic fight in that game, I think. You're totally right.
Miles, they obviously played in the pool stages as well, these two. And the season's been so long, you forget that a lot of this season's storylines have been created by those two matches. What can both sides, they look back at those pool matches, what can they deduce?
Yeah, there's an element of relevance. Of course there is. It happened this season. But of course, there was a lot happening around Saracens at that time in a very negative way, a lot to deal with off the field that was clearly impacting on them as a club. How could it not have? So they were in that space. They're in a very different space now. There's clarity to their situation. Certain players have left without that question mark hanging over what their future would be. They sort of know where they're travelling next season and who is going to depart at the end of this phase and where they're going to be and how they're going to sort of work around their championship season. And that means they can just put everything into this one-off cut element and show exactly what they're made of and prove their point. So I think semi-finals in general are one-off days, but I think if you're going to try and make that comparison with the pool meeting, it's not a really valid one for this particular meetup between Racing and Saracens. This is all about what is coming on the weekend.
And emotion too, Miles. The Sarries have demonstrated they've got plenty in the bank, but we've always said it in big matches in the past, how teams rely on emotion to get them through big moments. How much emotion do you think Saracens have left in the tank?
It's a good question. I suppose we'll only find that out on Saturday, but I would wager they have an awful lot of emotion left in the tank because that's what they deal with. They deal in that kind of area, and it just epitomizes them as a club. They go very deep, but you have to counter that with how deep Racing 92 now go. and also the experience that they can bring to this game now. I think the history of this competition shows, we talked about the 25 years and the memories, one thing that just keeps coming up time and time again is that a club has to be ready to take that big step to lift the trophy. They have to go through the years of hurt to get themselves in a position where, as a club, and okay, players come and go, but there will be a thread of players for both Racing and Saracens here involved in this game who know exactly what it means now. And Racing 92, I feel, are in that state of readiness, and that must be a major concern for Saracens. They'll know that, and they'll try and combat it. Whether they can do that on Racing's patch is a different matter.
Florent, with Racing, they have one player who is a maverick, is a genius, can create something out of nothing in Finn Russell. And it was wonderful hearing from Greg Laidlaw last week on just how you try and work with someone like Russell. How instrumental, how much of a point of difference has he been to Racing since he signed?
Well, I think since he signed at the club, I think they find a bit more live into their backs play, if I can put it that way. Because Racing have obviously based their game on good set piece, strong forward, etc. But suddenly they've got more distribution. They find a bit more. The first try they score was a classic, just simple, bring the defense on the left and then go and score on the right. And it was just through the hands and the decision making of the players who receive the ball. And the job is to make those decisions. And I think the thing with Russell, he can actually make that decision, but he also bring that uncertainty because he's capable of creating for his own space for himself and score tries and put pressure on defender that way. But I think Racing, to get back on what Marl said, Racing for many years, and I've said it before, I think on the podcast, have that difficulty to win big title. They've only got one French title, but they've been in lots of final, and I think like Marl said, I think they're getting ready to win something big. I just like to see them a bit more mobile around the pitch. I think they're still offering too much space out wide, and I think that'll be an area which could be exploited. They're not mobile enough in their defense. They're kind of piled up in the middle of the pitch, and I think that'd be the job of the like of Zibo and Russell to make sure they kind of move a bit more their defense.
And Miles, it's being played at the La Défense Arena, which is an extraordinary sporting amphitheatre. But what kind of difference do you think for Racing it will be playing at home?
Yeah, it's all about sort of counterbalances this game, isn't it? Totally take Flo's point there in terms of preparedness for this game. Saracens have had more games since we returned from lockdown. Their selection has been built for those games, yes, but also built with this game very much in mind, or this run towards what they hope will be another title very much in mind. They've been gearing everything, obviously, given their premiership situation, to Europe. And that works in their favour. But working against them is this venue and the fact that we don't just have home country venue for these semi-finals, but because of the pandemic, we have home ground venues for Racing and Exeter. And that has to be an advantage. There's no doubt about that. But then, to go back to this sort of weighing up the balances and countering again, there'll only be 5,000 people there, where normally it will be absolutely packed out. But then there won't be any Saracens fans. So you could just go on and say there's a plus, there's a minus, there's a plus, there's a minus. I just don't know where this equation is going to end. I think basically it will just come down to one or two really, really big plays and important moments like we saw in Dublin at the weekend. And Leinster almost got themselves back into it with that overturned penalty. That could have then led to the momentum, but Saracens grabbed it back, used the scrum to good effect, and that became the pivotal moment of the match when they started winning those penalties again at the scrum. So it is going to come down to fine margins, but it's great to debate all of these issues, but come the fine analysis, you have two absolutely gigantic European teams who know they'll go into a battle with very little in it.
So go on, Miles. You got 10 quid of mine. Where are you putting it?
I'd reduce it to €1, James, if I was you. Where am I putting it? Look, I would never, ever rule Saracens out. I didn't rule Saracens out from the weekend. That is not talking after the event. I couldn't quite believe how they were being written off. That's no disrespect to Leinster. I'm a great admirer, of course I am, of what Leinster have achieved and will achieve again. They'll be back, and it sort of helps them that there's not a long gap between the new season starting. They'll be back into their stride. Too many good players, too much depth there. But they were well beaten by Saracens at the weekend. Can Saracens back that up? If I had to put money on it, I think I'd probably go the home thing. But that is my theory. If it's too tight, go home. And it is very home, isn't it, with your own patch? But without that crowd, maybe that's an evener. I've not really answered it, have I? Have I answered it?
We're all as bad as each other, journalists. We never give a straight answer to a straight question. But it's because it's so... You've said it, Miles. It's so complex. And there are so many nuances in this, which are what make the game utterly enthralling. Florian, what about you?
Well, where my heart lies. 25 years of racing, man, and I just still feel, racing at home actually will be a tough hurdle for Saris. It's not going to be 40 minutes they're going to need Saris. They're going to need 80 minutes to beat Racing. So can they sustain that rhythm? I still think, it's probably a 55-45 on that one for Racing, because I think that they will have that price to be at home on their home ground, no crowd, etc. But don't you worry. I'm sure the Lorenzetti of that world will think about something to destabilize Saracens. So I go with Racing on that one.
Flo, I'm taking 55-45 is percentage and not score. Otherwise, I'm not going to have a voice at the end of that game.
Wow. You're going to be knackered by 80 minutes, Miles, if that's the case. In a moment, we're going to look ahead to our second semi-final, Exeter against Toulouse.
Hi, I'm Simon Zebo and you're listening to the Champions Rugby Show.
Well, let's talk Toulouse now. And wing Cheslin Kolbe was at his electrifying best as the French booked their spot in the semi-finals, thumping Ulster at the Stade Ernest Vanel.
Here's Malvarca again. Didn't work for him last time, but he's got it on to Kolbe because it works for Cheslin Kolbe. Cannot keep him out of any game at any point. If there's a chance, he'll snip it and take it.
Yeah, obviously scoring tries is always great. It's a put a cherry on top of the cake, but I must give credit to my teammates. Without them, us as wingers, we're nothing, and they create the space and the go forward for us to make sure we capitalise from that. Obviously, there's a lot that's been going on with the COVID and everything, but I think we first focused on the top 14 and now the quarterfinal. That's now behind us, so we focus on to next week for the semi-final. I think we just have to make sure we don't get ahead of ourselves firstly, and just make sure we keep on working as hard as we can. And yeah, there's 2 more games left, and hopefully we can make history again and just make our supporters, make the jersey proud, and yeah, just make ourselves proud, I think.
Well, Miles, you were commentating on that performance from Toulouse. The all-court game, the swagger is back. And in Cheslin Kolbe, boy, do they have a wonder rugby player.
He is. I really shouldn't have favourites in my job. I've tried to make a career of avoiding that because it wouldn't be fair. But if I'm going to be absolutely honest, James, at the moment, there is no other player in world rugby that gets me or perhaps anybody out of their seat quite like this man, Cheslin Kolbe. It's shades of Shane Williams, Christian Cullen, Brian Habana, Jason Robinson, take your pick. He's in that great category already. There's no doubt about that. The way he provides electricity every time that he gets the ball. And when he doesn't get the ball, he is bouncing into tackles and making impact, really showing his strength as well. He is such an asset and such a joy to watch.
So, Florent, how do you defend against him?
Well, that's a good question. You don't give him space, he bounces off you. You give him space, he run around you. That's basically Cheslin Kolbe at the moment. I've watched him on the weekend, and his abilities got ball in hands. He's like big, tall, doesn't matter. He run at them. He's so powerful and bounce people off. I mean, it's just incredible. And then you give him ball in a bit of space, and the feet just suddenly get electric and talk. So I don't know what's the answer to a guy like that. Maybe you organize a three-man defense around him, and every time he gets the ball, you just pile on the top of him. That's probably the best way to do it.
So, Florent, what's been the difference then with what Hugo Muller's managed to do? He's brought together a young team, but that youth has not hindered them, has it?
No, but I think, let's not forget Hugo Mola is from that great generation of Toulouse, grown by the Pierre Villepreux, Pierre Villepreux originally in a rugby style. But for me, Toulouse at the moment have gone back to what they were very, very good in the 90s, that offload game, that play around the ball, which, makes so much uncertainty. I remember playing against them, and it was just like you could never know where the ball was going to go, which player was going to get. And they really bring that back into the club. And I think one part of it is I think they have gone back to developing their own player. They haven't gone back to an academy now, which seems to produce even more players than ever. So they've got that legacy, that Toulouse legacy, which kind of disappeared a little bit in the last 5-6 years, but they're coming back. And Hugo is very, very instrumental to bring that. But let's not forget, around him, you've got, on the board of director, you've got the Lacroix, you've got the Castagnette. All those players were part of that culture as well. And I think that's one of the big reasons they managed to bring it. Because if you look at the players now, they're all in their mid-20s, but they all grew up, when they were probably in their early teen in that culture of Toulouse. And they had it, they had that cognitive understanding of the game, and now they're part of it. It's probably easy to put together, or easy, not so easy, but you understand they already kind of have an idea, and also they've got stellar players, obviously, at the moment.
Stellar players, yeah, 1 to 23. They're going to be travelling to Sandy Park to take on Exeter this weekend. Let's speak to the former Exeter prop, Brett Sturgess. Brett, thanks for joining us on the pod.
No, brilliant, thanks for having me.
Well, this will be a fascinating clash, won't it, really? And Exeter's first ever semi-final in the Heineken Champions Cup. From an Exeter standpoint, it's obviously a massive deal. Can they deal with that level of expectation, do you think?
I think so. I think they're now ready to deal with that. I think this has been the next step that the club have been going for. Obviously, they've now been competing for the last 4 or 5 years domestically in the league, and obviously won the league. And this is the next step for them. And they've just been building over the last few years to deal with these situations. And obviously, a club like Toulouse coming, it bodes for a fantastic semi-final.
I think what's really interesting is what Rob Baxter has said after they beat Northampton, is that he wants this to be a contest. He wants this to be a tough semi-final, so he can really figure out for himself just how good his side is. They've won a Premiership title, but they haven't gone on. They haven't kicked on and won more titles. And if they are to be considered one of the best teams in Europe, they have to win big games like this.
That's totally true. And they've got the players now. I think in the past they would have come against someone like Toulouse, and the players now that they've got internationally have been in big occasions, but this domestically now that they need to prove that they can do it as a team. And like I said before, I think that they've got that team now. It's just unfortunate nobody's going to be over there to watch it, but I think it's going to be a fantastic occasion, and I think they can rise to it. And the next step will be beating a team like Toulouse.
And the work rate is obviously key, possession is key, and Baxter's talked about creating fatigue in an opponent. Do you think that's going to be critical to how this game pans out?
I think so. Chiefs, they've got that game, like you said, they thrive on dealing with the pressure, and then you feel like you've got Chiefs under the pump, and then they come back at you, and we all know from 5 metres out there, absolutely deadly now, that any side's going to struggle to stop them there. But it's that 95 metres before that, it's what they do before that, and teams are not dealing with that at all at the minute. And when they get 5 or 10 metres out, the power play from the forwards is fantastic. But now you can see the likes of the backs are really contributing since the restart, especially in the Premiership domestically, and obviously now in Europe they've got to do the same.
And Brett, obviously Sandy Park is going to be hosting the game this weekend. Can you just describe how Rob Baxter manages a week as big as this?
It's getting the players back in straight away, getting them focusing. Such a big week for them, obviously going into a semi-final. So nothing much will change, obviously, in the preparation and the fact that, be it a league or a cup competition, so it'll get them back in, get them focused, the normal preparation, looking at the game at the weekend, looking what they can work on, and then it will be saying to the players, this is a big step forward, a semi-final in Europe, but there will also be no difference in the way they look at it. But obviously, in the back of their minds, obviously, it's that next step, being a semi-final in Europe for the first time.
And if you're the coaching staff now, Ali Heifer and co, how are they going to try and stop Toulouse running right round the fringes? What do you think? What's their defensive plan this week?
Toulouse have developed a game which is pretty much all play, all action, and sometimes it's hard to know how to defend that, the type of players they've got. Also, I think what I'll be saying is they need to probably starve them of the ball, and when they do get it, is have 15 men on their feet, real good defensive line, probably know when to compete at breakdowns, but have a real good understanding that you're probably going to want to win that numerical battle. So you want people on your feet and being busy, like you say, around that defensive line. So yeah, I think just men on the feet and their attacking threat all over the place. So sometimes you just got to go and with your game plan, starve them of their ball. But I think ultimately they'll be as worried about Exeter's attackers as well.
And Brett, just finally, tell me who the characters are in that Exeter changing room. Who are the guys who are going to be driving the personality of the team this week and the atmosphere?
The old heads, Gareth Steenson will kind of be, although he's obviously not playing so many game minutes at the minute, he'll be a big leader in there. I think the guys coming through, I think within the pack, Luke Cowan-Dickie, big character on and off the pitch. And then Henry Slade and Jack Knoll, these guys, doing it internationally, are a big driving force now. They've been with Exeter now since they were young teens, and now they're coming through 25, 26-year-olds, and they're playing massive big parts in how Exeter play.
Great to have you with us, Brett. Really appreciate your insight, and no doubt you'll be watching, hoping Exeter can make their first final.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
The former Exeter prop, Brett Sturgess, there on what the Chiefs have to do to unpick Toulouse. Miles Harrison, what do you think Exeter have to do to unpick Toulouse then?
Well, they've just got to try and live with their power. That is pretty obvious. But also, having watched Toulouse again yesterday, an awful lot revolves around these two excellent centres in Peter Arquis and Sofiane Guitoun. We've talked about Kolbe, and there are other wonderful wide players, the likes of Ramos and Uge, if they go down that selection route to join Kolbe. And halfbacks, Dupont, rated by Dan McFarlane, Ulster's coach, as the best 9 in the world, and alongside Untermack at 10. But Guitoun and Arquis seem to be those solid rocks. More than that, they've got skills and lovely soft touches, but they really are a physical presence too. And it seems to work all around those two. So from an Exeter point of view, they'll have to get to Toulouse in that area, away from all of the ball-carrying forwards and the lovely touches from Joe Takori and whatever the back row will bring and the forward grunt from the scrum. They've got the lot, haven't they, Toulouse? So Exeter are going to have to be at their very, very best.
And Florent, do you think Toulouse are fit enough? If Baxter is going to try and use this angle of creating fatigue, Toulouse have got to be physically strong enough to get through 80 minutes plus, potentially.
Yeah, no, I think they are. But, to go back on Miles' point, I think Toulouse is a very, very balanced team. And, the forwards, and then the proof on the weekend, if you look at where the try come from, all the backs, but who does all the work is the forward. So I think there is a good share of the workload, if you want. And I think, it's going to be tough for Exeter to break down that midfield. I agree with Mal 100%. Guitoun-Arquis combination is phenomenal. But then you've got the Dupont who can bring, either the pass, either carrying the ball to the line, either break the line. So he's such a versatile player for a scrum half. He can do it all. So I think, they're going to have to really, really find a way to quiet those players. But let's not forget, I think Toulouse also has the ability to use their forward. When you look at those guys they've got, their set piece is very good. I thought that Exeter was a bit below par in line out on the weekend. So they could bring it on from there as well. So it's a big task for Exeter, I think, this weekend. Baxter wants to tire Toulouse. Good luck to him, because I think they're going to be running after the ball.
Where's this game going then, Flo?
Well, Toulouse, I think, even if it's Exeter home ground, I still see Toulouse being a bit, I feel Exeter has progressed and they are becoming a force to reckon, but I still think they haven't got yet the maturity to go against an hurdle of a machine like Toulouse. And the way Toulouse has been playing this weekend just confirmed it. I mean, to be fair, the thing we could make a big change is, weather condition, maybe if it's raining and if it's a wind blowing right and left, around Sandy Park, it could be a problem. But, on a good ground, on a good weather, let's see what happens. But I think Toulouse definitely.
Miles?
Exeter will have to be at their best, as I say. Where are they in their development? First semi-final and all that. Yes, Rob Baxter wanting his team to get the test. They will get a test, there's no doubt. Toulouse will arrive. And will they allow Exeter to do what they want to do? Equally, will Toulouse be allowed to do what they want to do on Exeter's patch in their backyard?
So I think the home advantage thing really does work for Exeter. But when you look at the development of the sides and where Toulouse have come from, they won the top 14 last time out. Of course, the season just gone by has been annulled, but the season before that, they're back to winning trophies. They've won all their games in the pool stages this season in Europe, and then they weren't at their best yesterday against Ulster, but it was still more than enough to show a chasm between Toulouse and Ulster on the day. So that is the size of Exeter's task. It is a mammoth one, but it will be one that they will relish. I can see Toulouse starting as favourites with some. I can see some backing Exeter too. But if I had to go again, a little bit like with my Racing call, I'm going to go slightly French, I think. I think Toulouse are ready to return to the big time.
Exeter Chiefs Toulouse, this Saturday, Sandy Park, 3:30 local time, live coverage on BT Sport, France 2 and BN Sports. Now fans around the world will have better access than ever before to the Heineken Champions Cup and European Rugby Challenge Cup with the launch of a new OTT platform, epcrugby.tv. For full details on that, go to the EPCR website. And speaking of the Challenge Cup, the quarterfinals over the weekend provided lots of entertainment. Friday, Bristol beating Dragons comprehensively 56-17. Bordeaux Bègles 23, Edinburgh 14, Toulon 11, Scarlets 6. And Sunday's match, of course, between Leicester and Castres Olympique was cancelled by EPCR, as you know. The reason why? Well, the decision followed a meeting of a medical committee comprising medical leads from the unions, league bodies, both clubs, and subsequent independent medical advice. The committee met by video conference on Friday, following confirmation by Castres that 3 members of their playing group, as well as 1 staff member, had tested positive for COVID-19 in advance of the club's planned departure to England. It was decided on medical advice that the quarterfinal could not go ahead safely in the circumstances, and as a consequence, Castres forfeited the match and Leicester qualify for the Challenge Cup semi-finals. So disappointment for Castres. But Miles, what about Bristol? They were astonishingly good against the Dragons.
Absolutely terrific. And Cheslin Kolbe is a star of the world game. So is Semi Radradra for Bristol. Could watch him all day, every day. And in the forwards, Ben Earl starting to produce the kind of level of performance which really makes you think this man is destined to win not just a few caps, but an awful lot of caps. In fact, with Earl, he's one of those players, when he burst on the scene, you just knew, you just looked at him and thought, this man will go on to play international rugby. And it's a burden that he will shoulder very easily. He will take it in his stride. If you're making comparisons to other sports, maybe it's like turning up at a cricket game and seeing a batsman take apart a county attack, and you think that man is a test player, or tennis, a sort of an early round match where a player takes somebody out 6-love, 6-love, 6-love with their eyes shut almost. You just look at somebody and you think, yeah, you have got it, and Ben Earl certainly has it. So just 2 names to pick out, but there's so much more to Bristol than that. I think they could go all the way in this competition. They were brilliant against the Dragons.
And Flo, what about Bordeaux and Toulon? What's impressed you about those two?
I wouldn't say I was fully impressed. I know they've done the job, but they didn't show and didn't display anything which led me to say. I mean, I'm a bit minimized. I think Bristol is probably the favourite in that competition at the moment. Bègles is progressing solidly, but they just they don't play the rugby. We're going to give them enough momentum. They're quite safe in their rugby, and I think Edinburgh could have and then maybe should have, but they didn't take the opportunity too well. Bègles is a team in the making, I think. It's still, early days. Hoyos came in as a new coach here a year ago now. He's building a group, and what he's trying to do, like he's done everywhere else he's been as a coach, he's trying to create a culture and something that the players can embrace. Like a lot of the clubs, Saracens, Toulouse, that culture is established, and I think a club like Bègles still need to get into that culture and need to develop their rugby on the pitch. On the other side, Toulon, it's not the Toulon we knew. It's a different era for Toulon. I think they seem kind of mixing their rugby between accuracy they used to have and the individual players. They don't seem to link the both together. It's a bit disjoncting for me when I watch them playing. So I wouldn't write them off totally, because obviously there is some experience in that squad. But I do still, what I've seen from Bristol, what you look at the way they are coached and the way they came through the last couple of years since been promoted, I think they look like certainly a big contender for the title.
Well, that's just about all we've got time for, fellas. I just want to ask you one final question. Who are we going to be talking about this time next week? Miles, Flo, one player who you think is going to be making the headlines this coming weekend?
Well, in view of what I said earlier, I have to say Cheslin Kolbe, don't I?
Yes.
He is the one for me at the moment. But look, the beauty of the Champions Cup semi-final is that we just don't know. And Flo and I have had a little go trying to say who we think is going to win. And, some of those views will be more certain than others, but we don't really know deep down. And you look at all of these semi-finals and you look at the Challenge Cup as well. There's possibilities that they can go either way, genuine possibilities, and we don't know who's going to step up as the star. And, one of the beauties of sport, when sport is at its best, is when you just don't know. You can't predict. And I'm quite happy to stay with that as a sort of way of going into this semi-final weekend. It is a unwritten book. Let the players write the pages in front of us and let them make themselves into stars. But yeah, to go back to your question, James, Kolbe is my man at the moment.
One vote for Kolbe. Flo, finally.
What we want to see is the big players to come to the game. And, I think Toulouse will probably bring few. Kolbe will be one. I think Dupont, is phenomenal at the moment. Is making always the right decision. Is coming from nowhere to score tries. He's bringing this forward with it. He's a player I really, really rate. But in the meantime, look at Sarries. Look at those players they've got. Itoji's playing well. Jamie Joe's playing well. Alex Good playing fly half last weekend just was fantastic. So, so many of them. I think we all just got to pray for a great weekend of rugby, and I'm sure that'll be the case.
It is ridiculous, isn't it, James? It's ridiculous. There's so many names on show this weekend. Star quality across the board. It's so appealing.
Fellas, you're absolutely right. Spot on. I'll put a little mention in for Finn Russell as well. I think this could be a weekend where, well, the script is written for someone like him to make a few points in what could be a huge year for him with a Lions tour to come up as well. Fellas, thanks very much indeed for joining us on the pod. Thanks to you at home for listening. We'll be back next week to review those mouth-watering semi-finals and to look ahead to the final in the 25th anniversary season of the Heineken Champions Cup. Please subscribe to the podcast using your favourite provider. Leave us a review. But for this week, from me, James Burridge, it's goodbye.